It is time once again to talk Hawkeyes football right here at the Voice of College Football on the day after the end of the college football season. Please lock it in here at the Voice of College Football. We are here with Corey Brada from the Hawkeye at the Storm each and every Tuesday. It's at 4:30 Central Time, of course. Corey, how you doing today?
I'm good. It's quite a game last night. Good national championship. Didn't look good for about a half. I mean, looked one-sided, and we've had too many of those in
Oh, it
national.
looked good.
Well, it looked good for if you're a Big Ten fan and you're an Ohio State fan, which, by the way, I wanted Ohio State to win, but I found myself kind of rooting for Notre Dame in the second half because you just want a better game.
Yeah, I got you.
And, but yeah, I was happy for Ohio State. I'm not a big Ryan Day fan, but I know there's been a lot of, I don't know, what's the word? People have been coming to his defense today and kind of talking about how great of a story it was. And some of those people I think are opportunists, but you can give me your thoughts.
Well, when you say you're not a Ryan Day fan, that could be taken one of two ways. Just kind of from the standpoint of you're non-committal. He's just another college football coach. You're not a fan that way. Or obviously they can be taken as you're not a fan, meaning you don't like the guy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't dislike the guy. I kind of think he gives me a little of the what's his face from USC, Lincoln Riley.
Lincoln Riley.
He gives me a little bit of that. He's not as in your face with it as Lincoln Riley is. I think he's probably got a pretty big ego. I mean, do you agree?
I haven't sensed that from him. I don't think he comes across as that kind of guy, but I don't know the man, but he, when I think big ego in the sport, I think Urban Meyer probably had a pretty healthy ego.
Chip Kelly,
Lincoln Riley,
Brian Kelly,
maybe ego mixed with some level of just cynicism. And there are people that have big egos, but they're friendly, they're gregarious, they just are full of themselves, but they don't. But then there are the more kind of terse and harsh type people, like a Brian Kelly.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for the way that he helped that program to a national title, to win 4 straight games after what happened against Michigan. I understand how big that is. I do think we're going a little overboard when people start acting, and I know he didn't say that verbatim, but I know how some of your sound offs from post-game comments from coaches and players when they've said things like, everybody counted us out. He kind of said some of that last night. Yeah. Like, everybody wrote us off after that. No, they didn't. Come on. They did not.
That's were the favorite in every game they played.
You were in the playoff because they selected you for the playoff. If everybody wrote you off, you would not have been in the playoff. That doesn't make any sense. So that's the only thing. And I understand where he's coming from. I understand. That's the inner motivation, and it worked. I guess you could argue the proof is in the pudding that worked and motivated his guys, because I'm sure there was some doubt from 18 to 22-year-olds after that deflating loss to the Wolverines.
And again, to underline your point, but also to push back just slightly, if Indiana won the national championship, then I would have no issue with Kirk Cignetti saying, nobody expected us to do this. We were counted out.
Sure.
Would that have been technically correct? Yeah, there might have been 1 or 2 souls in the state of Indiana that thought from a delusional standpoint that they could win a national championship. But Ohio State wasn't just in the playoff. They were a favorite in every game they played, even against the number 1 team in the country. So they're certainly not written off.
It's a combination between, a lot different than had Iowa made a 12-team playoff in 2015 with 1 loss. They lost to Michigan State. Everybody wrote us off. We're going to go win. Well, no, you're right. It would have been a huge story had Iowa ran to a national title at that point. But Ohio State, with the level of talent that they had, they were perceived to be. They were my preseason number 1. I think they were probably your preseason number 1. I thought they were better than Georgia preseason. I think that played out the way we expected. And that Michigan game is just a quandary. I don't know how you explain that. There are some things in sports that you just look back at and say you really can't explain. Although I will say my own much bigger expert, especially on that game last night than I am. But my one reaction as a quote unquote team analyst for Iowa, my reaction to what I saw last night is it appeared that when Ohio State got up, that they fell prey to what they did against Texas a little bit, what got them beat against Michigan, because the way they got up is they utilized all of those guys. I mean, Will Howard was just slinging it everywhere. And when you have Jeremiah Smith and Ibuka and, Tate, and I mean, obviously they ran the ball well, but boy, it helps when you have those options out wide that spread the field. But then when you start trying to play in a phone booth, they've got a really good run game, but they're also going up against a pretty good front in Notre Dame. That's not how you beat them. And it wasn't until Ohio State decided, all right, we're gonna throw the ball to win this game here at the end. Notre Dame's pushed this to 8, and 3rd and long, best call of the day from Chip Kelly was the go to Jeremiah Smith, and that won him the game. And it was the best. To me, that's what football's all about, and what sports is all about, especially the two major college sports, football and basketball. Get the ball to your best player. And I don't know that Jeremiah Smith is their best player. He's certainly probably their most talented player. They got a lot of good ones, but I don't think you can go wrong in that situation, man on man, on the outside, on the 3rd and long situation to win the game. Go put the ball up for grabs for Jeremiah Smith. And it wasn't like it was some jump ball. I mean, he had separation. It was a good throw from Will Howard, and the game was over at that point. But I do applaud Notre Dame because I thought they were down and out when they got down 24. And I thought those were a couple of excellent 2-point conversion plays. We're talking about Iowa. There's a lot to learn from that game last night if you're an Iowa fan. One is 2-point offense. And I think Tim Lester will probably get that figured out, but that's been a problem, underrated problem here at Iowa for so long, is they do not have good 2-point plays. I don't know the last time they converted on a 2-point play. And it helps when you have a mobile quarterback, which Will Howard is, which Leonard is. But boy, I was impressed with their fight to get back within 8.
Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Corey, Brad, and myself get together every Tuesday. We've done this 181 consecutive weeks. And of course, catch Corey with Iowa post-game men's and women's basketball over on From the Hawkeye of the Storm. As you see on the banner there, contributions are appreciated here because we have slugged it out for about 4 consecutive years every week. And so we do appreciate your contributions here. And of course, we're going to transition to Iowa football, but it was the national championship game. It was a Big Ten team. It was a team that Iowa played. I'll just make one last point about the Ryan Day thing. I think what intersects here is he's, I'm not saying he's confusing, but he's putting together what he's perceiving as everybody counted us out as being the angst within the Ohio State fan base. I rarely differentiate fan bases and say, oh, this is the best fan base and this is a horrible fan base and they're delusional, because I think all those elements are in every fan base. There are respectful, classy fans. There are delusional. There are ignorant ones. Just like in the Ohio State fan base, it's no different. I do think because the expectations are so incredibly high that the fan base got very ugly after that Michigan game. Like a large percentage of them just did not treat those players or him in particular, Ryan Day, very well. And so then you have to basically defer to like a bunker mentality that it's us against the world, and even our own fans are booing us because we lost one game.
Yeah,
and we're still in the playoff, but we're getting booed, and Tennessee's coming up here and, filling half our stadium because our fans are mad at us.
I understand the perspective of Ryan Day, and I applaud him for it. You've got to take advantage of the situation. That's part of good coaching. But I also I think in general, I think the people, if anybody actually wrote them off, they weren't writing the team off. They were writing off Ryan Day. And yeah. I even said after the Michigan game, and I stand by what I said, had they lost to Tennessee, I think he may have been done. I think they may have fired him. Now, that game wasn't even close, so I applaud them for it. But you didn't really push back on that when I said that several weeks back. I think they may have fired him at that point. Now, let's just make something abundantly clear. Them winning a national title does not mean he's going to be the head coach in 2 years. If they go, I'm serious. If they go
I
lose,
was trying to explain the same thing last night to a few people. Go ahead.
if they go lose to Michigan again, flame out in the play, like you said expectations earlier. The expectations are so high for Ohio State. I'm guessing it's fair to say that, because I don't know this because I'm an Iowa guy, but my perception of reality for Buckeye land is it's right back on the horse, and you got to go do it again, win a national title next year. But at the same time, the Michigan itch has not been scratched yet by Ryan Day. So that's not going to go. Like, if they lose their fifth straight, there's not going to be people. There might be a few, but the majority of fans aren't going to say, well, he's lost 5 straight, but they did win a national title last year. People are so invested in that game. So I'm not saying he's going to be fired if they lose to Michigan this next year. I don't know what will happen. If they get, that will be a fascinating scenario. If they lose to Michigan again and then flame out in the playoffs, I don't know what Gene Smith does. I don't know, because I don't. You can't fire a guy a year removed from a national title without a scandal. But at the same time, how do you explain 5 straight losses in the game to the team up north? I don't know. But you have the better perspective on that. But that would be my opinion from the outside looking in.
No, a few people that this wasn't the focus of the call, but they mentioned, Ryan Day is a legend, and now he cemented himself at Ohio State, and he's got a lifetime contract. And I went, "Are you kidding me?" I said, people are so caught up in the moment. And again, the expectations of that fan base. I said, if we're sitting here 3-4, I didn't take it to 2 years. I took it a little bit further than that. But if we're sitting here in 4 or 5 years and he's 2-7 against Michigan, he's 1-4 right now, but people forget the first game. And they start to pile up first round playoff losses. No, people are going to long since forget what happened 3 years ago.
But this is a unique situation that he's already began to create, because we've never, very rarely, I shouldn't say never, very rarely in the past would you be able to say, oh, okay, in a 14 playoff, or certainly before that in the BCS era, that you could lose to Michigan and still win a title. Now they almost, they could have done it last year, right? They could have, because they lost to Michigan and made the playoff
2 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Last year they lost to Michigan. They were 11-1, and that wasn't good enough. They didn't make it.
I have the years mixed up in my own head.
Yeah. 2 years ago they lost to Georgia in the playoffs.
Wow. I really do have the years mixed up in my own head. Anyways, this is why you're the college football savant and I'm not. But anyways, but I'm saying the 12-team playoff, that could happen a lot. Now, do I think it's going to happen? Probably not. But is it crazy to think that they lose at Michigan next year? No. And is it crazy to think they go on and win a national title? No. I mean, they might do that again. They might make a habit of that. And it's going to be the strangest situation in, you could argue, college football history, just because of how this rivalry is perceived on the inside and outside. And it's going to be the oddest situation in the history of the rivalry, that you could potentially have a coach that continues to rattle off national championships. And I'm not, he's a long way from rattling them off, but I'm just saying, hey, you get 2 in a row, that you start to that, but while also not being able to beat the team up north. Now, again, I thought they were going to win that game this year. And this was the most shocking, to me, the most shocking loss since he's been here, and it's not even close. But yeah, I mean, crazier things have happened, in the 12-team playoff just changes how things are set up, I guess.
I don't know if it feels like this for you and your audience, because of course you're invested in Iowa first and foremost. And I don't know if this is permeated because Iowa played themselves out of it early, but it feels like I'm an NFL fan. It feels like the NFL. Like, I was trying to explain to people last night, I'm not trying to do this just to discard this Michigan loss and just say, well, it doesn't matter, and just to prove to Michigan. No, I am honestly stating that game, to me, growing up in Ohio as a Buckeyes fan, was everything. And that is dissipated, and then it's dropped off the cliff because of this new format. And I saw them 2 years ago play Georgia, and the same thing would have happened if they would have won that game. I would have been like, yeah, Of course, I wish they would have won against Michigan, but it doesn't matter now. And it feels like almost like a Ravens Steelers or Cowboys Redskins, or like a big NFL rivalry it's big, but it's not that big a deal because you move on, and you play the next game, and you go to the playoffs, and that's where it's really at.
And they were, I mean, ifs, ands, and buts, right? But they were a kick away from probably winning a national title 2 years ago.
Sure.
That TCU team wasn't beating them. So, I mean, think about that. We would have 2 such titles for Ryan Day without a win against Michigan. I mean, it's just bizarre and strange. But I also have my questions about Michigan. I think you and I are in the same boat. I mean, great end of the season. I mean, talk about beating a couple of blue bloods, but Alabama wasn't at full strength. Michigan did not have a good season, even with those 2 wins. And I don't know that Sherrone Moore is cut out for that job. Maybe he'll prove me wrong. I questioned it when that hire happened. So I think they got some questions to answer as well. I'm just happy Iowa doesn't have to play either one of those teams next year. Now, they play a lot of good teams, but they don't have to play the team up north or Ohio State all next year.
Corey, I've got a question for you and the chat. Since there was a Big Ten angle to the national championship game, and of course we want to give it an Iowa angle, what Big Ten team outside of Iowa would you most like to see win a national championship? Who would you be rooting for the most in that scenario? Who would you be rooting for the least, or maybe not rooting for all in the Big Ten? And everybody in the chat, Iowa fans, who would be your biggest rooting interest in the Big Ten and least rooting interest in the
reasonable? Reasonable? Or can I just say
everybody?
Any Big Ten team? Well, this
everybody.
You ought to know this is an easiest question that you've ever tossed me.
I think I know who you would root for.
Who would I root for?
Illinois.
Yeah, of course. Yes. I'll tell you what. I'll tell you who I'm not rooting for. And now I'm going to root for any Big Ten team.
Okay.
That's in, right? So in other words, Nebraska winning the title is better than Georgia. Okay, and I'm not an Ohio State fan, but I was rooting for Ohio State last night. Don't like the Irish regardless. But so Bielema would be at number 1. As far as teams that I would really
because it's Bielema, not Illinois.
Yeah, but I have nothing against Illinois. I don't consider them a border rival. I know people want to make them a rival because they are a border school, but I don't consider them to be a border rival. So I would go Illinois as long as Bielema's there because I like Brett. The teams I would not root for, Penn State with James Franklin because of the head coach, Nebraska for obvious reasons, Minnesota because of PJ, Michigan would be at the top of not wanting to, don't care about them having success at all. Well, just saying. I like Schiano.
I enjoy that, of course.
I like Schiano. USC, bottom. They'd be at the bottom.
There's quite a few. No, where do you stand on Schiano? You don't like him?
No, I like Schiano.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I have respect for Schiano. Riley Leonard, nope. Don't care about
Lincoln
Oregon.
Riley.
Yeah, no, Lincoln Riley can.
You said Riley Leonard. That's the only reason.
Oh, is that what I said? Is that what I said? Riley Leonard? Whatever. Lincoln Riley, thank you. So, and then UCLA, Deshaun Foster, seems like a nice guy. Again, are these reasonable? No, because he's not winning a national title next year. Oregon, I don't like Oregon. The idea of Oregon coming into the conference and winning one early, I don't like that. Holistically, I don't like that. Sure. And I don't love... There's a persona with Oregon. Like I have a soft spot for Eugene. I've told you this before. For Eugene and the Ducks, I got family out there. It's a beautiful area of the country. I don't love the perception that they have right now. They've got this is the second straight guy that they bring in out of the portal who has been groomed elsewhere, and they basically just buy him and he puts up massive numbers. I don't love that, but that is also how college football is now. So I don't like that particularly. Washington, again, just the Pac-12 flavor, would not necessarily like the idea of them coming into the Big Ten. So any of the West Coast schools, preferably a longtime member, would be better. Northwestern would be a cool story. So I guess I could say I root for Northwestern. Who am I missing?
Michigan State.
Yeah, I mean, Jonathan Smith seems like that's a cool story. Hey, he wins one in year 2. What a story that would be. Would make that loss to that win against Iowa maybe look a little less embarrassing from this year, a little less embarrassing. By the way, can I bring something up? I talked about this with Don Patterson the other day because we did a final season recap live show. We actually previewed the big national championship game. How about this for a scheduling quirk? And I didn't notice this until the other day. I mean, they've announced the dates for all these games now as well. Iowa plays Michigan State again. Again. That is weird. That is very strange because they did not, let me tell you something. They did not play Michigan this year. They did not play Illinois this year. They did not play, USC. No. Yeah, well, they didn't play USC, but I'm thinking of schools they don't play in 25 either. Like Michigan State and Illinois are two schools they didn't play in 24, do not play in 25. Why are they playing Michigan State in 24 and 25? That doesn't make any sense to me. It must have just been a scheduling conflict that had to happen.
And didn't they play Michigan State in 23 because they had that big punt return at the end of the game?
They did, but I'm more so thinking with the expanded league and
Sure.
the new system where Iowa plays 3 teams every year in Minnesota, Nebraska, Wisconsin. In general, I guess my understanding was that the rest of the teams were just kind of be on a rotational basis. And I mean, obviously trying to make the schedules even. So maybe that was part of the evening factor, trying to even Iowa's schedule out. But I just thought that was odd. So maybe they didn't want to give them Illinois or Michigan since those are perceived to be better opponents.
Unless I'm forgetting something, because I delve into this extensively when it first is decided. And of course, with the new teams coming in the league, they had to go to a new format and no divisions. That I got real acquainted with it then. Maybe I'm forgetting something, but the SEC, it's very transparent. They basically made a schedule, and the second season of this new 16-team league, they're all playing the same teams. They just flipped home and away. Now in the Big Ten, obviously they have these, what we'll call them rivals or designated opponents, and Iowa has as many as anyone with Minnesota, Nebraska, and Wisconsin. But beyond that, I thought they were doing something similar to what you just stated, trying to go through a rotation of teams and that there wouldn't be a back-to-back situation.
Yeah, and I'm looking through the schedule, and I'm just kind of spitballing this without looking at the schedule this year. But if I'm not mistaken, so they play Rutgers next year, okay? They play Indiana next year. They play Penn State next year. They play Oregon next year. So if I'm not mistaken, that's everybody that in these 2 years, they will have played everybody in the Big Ten except Illinois, Michigan, and Purdue, if I'm not mistaken. So I find it interesting why that was done that way. Because Purdue, if you're trying to give them an easier opponent, Purdue would have been an easier one you know what I'm saying, to balance things out. I don't know. I just thought it was odd that, and Michigan State's the only team that is in that category here, Mark. They're the only team on the schedule that's in that category of a team, not part of the 3-team every year thing that Iowa did play this year that they play again next year. Every other team is different.
Could have been one of those situations where, of course, they line up all the rivalry games and then they figure out who didn't play the previous season and they go through the entirety of the schedule at the same time. It's not like they pick them off one at a time. They're trying to map it all out at the same time. And then they got kind of like maybe through 3 loose ends at the same time. And they're just like, okay, well, we got to connect those 2 because that's all we got left, and them.
Right. And that could be. That's a game that Iowa should win. It is in Iowa City next year. That's probably good. But it's a game Iowa should have won this year, and they looked horrible on defense against that team. So I guess in a sense that, maybe it's a good thing because I still don't think Michigan State will finish in the top half of the Big Ten, and it should be ambition, motivation to go beat down on the Spartans. But hey, that's 2 years in a row where Michigan State didn't have been very good, pushed Iowa deep into a game. This past year, they throttled them. So, Aiden Childs, I'm guessing, I haven't been following their portal activity, but I'm guessing he's perceived to be the starter in 25. Is that fair?
Oh, yeah.
So he made Iowa look silly at times. So, but that was the one thing that stood out on the schedules. I was kind of glancing through it with Don. I did see that they are still looking at, I believe, at a DB in the portal, but it's been pretty quiet since they landed Sam Phillips out of Chattanooga. And I wouldn't be shocked to still see them get one or two guys in the portal, probably up front, probably at defensive back. But I think they're going to be very, very specific with their targets there. And with this new revenue sharing thing, that doesn't, I mean, they got people that are working behind the scenes, obviously, in speedy fashion, because this thing is coming up faster than people realize. But it complicates things a little bit. The only thing I can tell you from the last week that we haven't talked about, do we want to discuss it, is the Cade McNamara stuff. I know we didn't, that broke after our last show, and he's headed to East Tennessee State. I don't know how much time you want to spend on ETSU, Mark?
Well, I would normally spend nothing on him, but there's been so much time spent on this show and on your channel about Cade McNamara. He's probably been talked about more than anyone over the last, 2.5 years, whatever it's been. I guess he would have been acquired right about this time 2 years ago. So about 2 years. If we had a staff here, on this case, I would say, I want to go back and I want to hear everything that Corey and I had to say about the acquisition of Cade McNamara, because I would be curious.
So let me ask you this: was
yes.
that now that he's moved, like we can talk about it now without anybody saying don't talk about it. I mean, like, he's been through the program, he's gone, he's signed with ETSU. Here's my question: did Iowa miss on him, or did he just simply tank? Did his career, did his abilities, which would, hey, part of that I could be injury related, did he just tank and flame out once he got to Iowa? Or was it just a gigantic misevaluation?
It's a great question, because if you do the simple, lazy analysis, he went to East Tennessee State and he wasn't that good at Iowa. So they missed on him, because this is all he's able to acquire.
Not necessarily.
That's why I'm saying that's the lazy take on it, because there's also a part of that goes into the Iowa narrative of playing much better than some of the parts they have, especially on offense. And then when those guys move on, it's right to a much lesser program.
And hey, second knee injury plus what he dealt with the preseason stuff in 2023, that, no question, he took steps backwards because of those injuries. There's no doubting that. But let's not forget, he wasn't very good even when he was playing healthy. So, I mean, was Michigan's talent around him, did it really make him look that much better? Or would you say he never really looked that good, and Iowa was just infatuated with the team results? Because that is, I mean, we've been critical of Kirk for being too concerned with a quarterback's win-loss record as a starter. Hey, Deacon Hill's got a really good win-loss record in the Big Ten. All right, but he ain't starting at Dixie State right now. So, I mean, I do think Kirk's got a problem with that. He's proven that. He has a problem that I don't know that has been addressed fully. And part of the way you fix that problem, I think, with a coach his age, is you rely on other people like Tim Lester, and I think hopefully he's doing that now. But I wonder if maybe the easiest way to reconcile or to explain what happened with Cade McNamara's experience is that it was a combination of both. His injuries made him worse than he was at Michigan, but he also wasn't as good as certain people thought he was at Michigan, because we read too much into stats and we read too much into team results. And, you know, he won a national title, or he went to a national college football playoff, and he won a Big Ten championship. I think it's even more of a fascinating conversation if we talk about what Michigan saw out of high school from Cade McNamara. What had made him good enough to come to Michigan and start? Was their quarterback room? If this is the quarterback that was all along at Michigan, you're telling me there wasn't a better player in that room until J.J. McCarthy? I mean, we can go down a rabbit hole discussing what went wrong with Cade.
I don't know that he was expected to be the starting quarterback at Michigan. The season before he became the starter was, of course, the COVID year, 2020. So Joe Milton was the starting quarterback at Michigan, and he was horrific. And Cade McNamara came into a game against Rutgers in which Michigan was down like 3 or 4, like they were buried by about 25 points. And he threw for like 350 and led them to an overtime win. Like 350 in like a half or 3/4, and led them to an overtime win at Rutgers by some crazy score, like 42-39. And then he kept the job. And so that ushered them into 2021. And I am in no way going to pat myself on the back, but I do remember us having conversations, and I was saying, Cade McNamara is not that good. He's good. He's an upgrade. I think he's a good quarterback for Iowa, but I was clearly stating JJ McCarthy's a better quarterback and will prove that.
But good Big Ten quarterbacks don't end up at ETSU. So there's a divide somewhere. That's my point. Something happened there. I think it's got to be a combination of both. It has to be. Because if he was a good Big Ten quarterback, at a minimum, he'd go to a G5 and be the assured starter. He's going to ETSU, and I think he's going to be the starter. But, I mean, that's totally different. And ETSU is not even a good FCS program.
You are right. You are right. I think at one point before he arrived at Iowa, when we had one of those many discussions, I placed him somewhere. We started to filter through the quarterbacks, and I ranked him somewhere in the middle.
So if we're going to pat you on the back for your evaluation of Cade 2 years ago, let me ask you this.
Yes.
You've denounced the website ratings and the rankings and all that here of late with the portal. I know you haven't seen as much of Mark Gronowski because you were focused more on you've seen Mark. Come on.
I've never seen him throw a pass.
Then I'm not going to ask the question.
Well, I can't.
We need to get you to get into.
I've never seen play.
Okay, you want to know what you could do? Do you want to know what you could do to really punctuate this channel? Here's what you do. This channel, all right? Here's what you do. You literally have a Mark Rogers film session. And yeah, hey, you're not a coach, but who cares? You go on there and you grab Mark Gronowski film and you break it down in live time. As you are recording, this is the first time you've seen Mark Gronowski play. That would be, and you lead the video off by making that statement. I have never seen this man throw a football, and then go. And then when you're done, give an evaluation. That's called good content, Mark. I can't do that because I've seen Mark Gronowski play.
Well, you can still evaluate him.
I can still evaluate him, and I have to some extent. Okay. But I think it would be really good content for you in the offseason.
Well, you know what this channel is. This channel is this show. That's all this channel is.
It doesn't have to be.
It's show. That's what this channel is.
People would value your expertise on Mark Gronowski.
Well, I appreciate that.
There is value there that I can't bring as a non-national person. People respect you as a national person, but you acknowledge the fact that you have not seen much of Mark Gronowski. Sometimes don't catch the Iowa game.
Again, zero.
So that's what I'm saying. Go watch some Mark Gronowski film, put it in a video, and go from there.
This is what I understand about Mark Gronowski and the comp that I made for different reasons. And I'll go back to our conversation from a couple of weeks ago, was again, Max Brosmer at Minnesota, understanding that Gronowski's a better athlete. He's got a stronger arm. Brosmer came from the same level of play and succeeded at Minnesota. Didn't light the world on fire, but was a very good Big Ten quarterback. Operated the offense based on his brain. He replaced Ethan Kalkumanis, who based on everything, well, I've seen Kalkumanis play a lot of football, that Brosmer doesn't have the physical skills. He can't make the throws that Kalkumanis can. And I'm guessing Gronowski can make, but he knows how to operate the offense. He makes the right decision. He knows where to go with the ball. He throws it on time. He's accurate. He's just a pro, per se.
So that's content idea number one. Number two, and we can talk about this briefly here in the next couple minutes, but the other thing I did with Don the other day is we went through this 25 schedule for Hawkeye fans who are curious. They go back and watch the live show with Coach and I, the Hawkeye Hangout here a few days ago. Not this past one, but the one before that. No, was it this past? I think it was this past one. We looked at the 25 schedule from a lens of quarterback play, Mark, because what's been fascinating throughout this portal era is seeing the percentage of turnover just in the Big Ten Conference alone at that position. In other words, how many different starters do you see from year to year? And it's as you know, it's amazing the percentage of different starters from year to year. Compare it to what it would have been 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago. It's insane because theoretically, if a guy averages, most quarterbacks average being the starter for 2 years, then you should have what? What would that make it? The same starter at least 50% of the time, right, on the schedule?
Yeah, so half the quarterbacks should be the same quarterback as the
Theoretically.
previous season.
Theoretically. I mean, I'm trying to factor in, I guess, there's injuries and different things. Guys lose their jobs here and there, but that's reasonable. But you look at the schedule, and Iowa probably has a higher percentage of returning quarterbacks in the schedule this year than most teams. Rocco Becht is expected to be back at West Virginia. Iowa State. You've got Aiden Childs back at Michigan State. You have Dylan Raiola back at Nebraska. You have whoever the starter ended up being at USC, who ended up winning that job in the long run.
Jaden Mayava.
So he's expected to be the starter, correct?
Yes.
And Brosmer's done, correct?
Yes.
He only had 1 year, so that'll be different. But you have Drew Aller, who's going to be back for Penn State. He's on the schedule. Rourke is gone for Indiana. And then Wisconsin. Remind me of who the quarterback at Wisconsin is expected to be.
Well, of course, it was Braden Locke and Tyler Van Dyke last year.
Yeah, so it's somebody different. But
shoot, they got somebody. I'll look them up.
I was going to say Preston Stone, but he's Northwestern.
What was I just going to bring up? Oh, so Iowa's got Indiana on the schedule.
Yep.
So they've got the Cal quarterback coming in.
Mendoza.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And then you saw Devin Brown committed to Cal.
Yes.
I mean, literally minutes after the game ended. I thought that was funny, right? Like that wasn't already planned. But and then Rutgers. I don't know who their quarterback is.
Well, it was Ethan Kalki-Manis last year.
Oh, and it will be him next year. He's got another year left.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of returners. That's like that is like old-fashioned half of the return. That's fascinating to me. I don't know how to reconcile that, but on surface level, that makes me think the schedule is just as tough, if not tougher, than what we perceive it to be when you run through those different quarterbacks. And that's not counting, of course, UMass and Albany, but Iowa State, I mentioned them earlier.
Luke Altmaier will be back for a third season as the starting quarterback at Illinois.
And we don't get to play him. That's another year. Don't get to play Brett and Illini. So, hey, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see Brett go down, and I don't want to see Iowa go down.
I enjoyed the season Illinois had, and that they finished it off with a win against an SEC opponent in a really good game.
Yeah. A lot of fireworks too. Beamer kind of trolling, right? I enjoyed that. So, but yeah, I mean,
think who contacted me or who I was talking to either during that game or right after that game, and they just didn't realize how big Brett Bielema was, because we've had that conversation. They said, "Boy, he's really ballooned up in recent." I said,
"Oh,
no,
he's
not
been
really."
He's been.
I said,
"It's
been a while."
Yeah, he's been a big boy for a while. And real quick, just the teams that Iowa does play that will have different quarterbacks. I didn't mention those specifically. One being Oregon. You can probably say who their starter is going to be, but I have no idea.
I really can't off the top of my head.
That's going to be
know
fascinating.
A hot shot that's there from Hawaii, but he's not going to be the starter.
They've had Heisman candidate quarterbacks there of late, so they won't have that, or at least we don't think they will. I don't know who the quarterback at Minnesota is going to be this year.
I saw names and I didn't recognize any of those guys.
And then you mentioned Wisconsin. That one will be different, and that's basically it. That is basically, and in Indiana. They'll face what we assume will be Mendoza, but that's interesting. That's actually more than 5 out of 4 will be we perceive to be returning guys.
Wisconsin got a veteran quarterback. I'm almost positive,
but he's a new starter. I mean, he's new to Wisconsin. Yeah, and they don't have to play Northwestern, who got Preston Stone. They don't have to play whoever the new guy at Michigan is. Is he the carryover? I know they played a number of guys this season. Right?
No, they picked up Mikey Keene from Fresno State. He's probably going to be the starter, although Davis Warren, the starter, still going to be there. And then they got this hot shot that they're paying, we've heard, as much as $17 million to, Bryce Underwood.
They just got the kid from Maryland, didn't they?
Maryland.
Billy Edwards, didn't they?
No. Oh, he went to Wisconsin.
Oh, he went to
Billy
Wisconsin.
Edwards went to
Okay, I
Wisconsin.
got
That's
that
right.
turned around. Okay, but
Yeah.
see what's interesting about that is they have seen him before. They know Billy Edwards, so even though he's a new guy, he's not new to Iowa.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. That's another name. I could argue that's a returning guy. I know it's a
Sure.
different system, but they are familiar with Billy Edwards, assuming he's the starter. I thought that was an odd one. I don't know. I don't know how good Billy Edwards is.
He's a mid to
Well,
next lower tier Big Ten quarterback.
Luke Fickell has proven to be mid. He's got to figure out how to start winning there.
I don't know if he's proven it.
Well,
but
the
it's
clock's,
not
as you know, the clock ticks faster now.
Yeah.
And I think that clock is starting to tick on him 2 years in.
Yeah, considering they let go Paul Christ coming off a 9-4 season.
Yep.
Yeah.
And where is Paul Christ now? Is he still down at Texas advising?
Yes.
Interesting. Well, they had some success this year, obviously, and they have a guy who made headlines. One more thing to add, and if you got anything else, I tweeted this out here a few days ago. I thought it was humorous. I saw, and I read the article. I read the whole article. It was about Quinn Ewers returning to Texas and about how he never even thought, or I'm sorry, not returning to Texas, going to the league. He never even thought of taking an $8 million offer to go somewhere else. Like, do you realize how ridiculous that is? That, like, the idea that and even if the kid says that, I'm not calling him a liar, but I'm just saying it's not even within our nature as a human being to not pause, especially when it's above board, basically now. Like, he could have went somewhere, like, say he transferred to Miami and made $8 million for 1 year. Okay, he decided not to. I think it's probably a bad decision, but it's his business. And it's his business. But to say he never even thought about it, I think that's just, it was one of the dumbest headlines I'd seen in the transfer portal era. Because he's not guaranteed to make $8 million in the league the first year. I mean, think about it. He goes to Miami. Now he may have what do you think he'll be guaranteed? When he goes to the league, gets drafted, assuming he's second round? Is he going to be a first round kid?
I don't think so.
Okay, so
although teams are desperate for quarterback,
I mean, he's not even. I could see a guy who's a top 10 overall pick turning that money down. I'm just telling you right now, Mark. It is his decision. All these kids, they make their own decisions. From the outside looking in, he may have made a very poor business decision. And some people will say, well, he's following his dream, yada, yada. And that's fine. I don't have no problem with you saying that because, yeah, he could tear his leg up at Miami or wherever he'd be going and then he'd never play again. But to say he had an $8 million guarantee to go somewhere else, whether you like this era of college football or not, Mark, I think you and I both would have very likely taken that money to go somewhere else. I'm just, I was surprised at that, but I also kind of laughed at the idea that he didn't even consider it.
And the consideration these athletes had to make before NIL was, of course, grabbing the paycheck, moving on to the league, even if they weren't ready,
right?
Because they wanted to make money. And it's a physical sport. But now you can make, in some instances, like this one you're bringing up, potentially more money, and you can develop
and
even more.
Play college football.
Yes.
Like, if you look, and this isn't just one or two opinions, and maybe Iowa's a little different than other places, but you talk to coaches, they always say, especially in former players, the best years they had as football players were in college. They may have made more money in the league, but as far as the experience, it was college football. So to turn that down, and the idea of being told, here's $8 million, and Mark, it's basically guaranteed as long as, I don't know how other schools are doing it. Obviously, some of it's not above board. But the way it is with the Iowa Collective, the way the rule is set up right now, you can't pay a guy to be the starter. You can't say, well, if you're the starter, you make this much. You pay a guy based on what he fulfills off the field. That's how it's supposed to be.
Sure.
So if that money is being fed the way it's supposed to be fed, you can't really do anything if a kid tears his knee or if a kid loses his job. So you're going to a place, even if it's not 8 million, maybe the 8 million was dirty money. Maybe it was 4 or 5 million to go somewhere else. But someone's offering you 4 to 5 million guaranteed dough to play one more year in college football. And oh, by the way, when you're done, you can still go pro. And the chances of you ruining your grade, you're only a second round draft pick, maybe anyways. I just thought it was but hey, more power to. I hope he has success, and maybe he's a really good kid. He's made some money in college. I think we know that. So not that he probably needs the money, but hey, everybody.
Yeah, he was one of the first that was a headline that, oh, Quinn Ewers left Texas to go to Ohio State and he's making money, but he ran into CJ Stroud and couldn't get on the field.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a strange one to put together. I will say that once people make a decision, then what their public answer is typically, oh,
Right.
that was the obvious decision. That's the only thing I wanted. It was not an issue. I didn't even think about doing this other thing. That's what
Right. I mean, like the idea that right now, do you like what you're doing? Do you like what you're doing for a job?
Of course.
If somebody offered you $100,000 right now to sell the voice of college football, you can't convince me for a second you wouldn't stop and think about that. Like, come on.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you would, but I'm saying you would think about it.
Sure.
And I'm not
owe that to myself and other people to review options.
You owe it to yourself. Exactly. And I have to think that Quinn Ewers is smarter than to not even take that phone call or not even entertain the idea. So
somebody there, who is that on the screen? OS for Hawks. They dropped that at the point that you were suggesting content for me. So they liked that idea.
Mark Gronowski film breakdown with Mark Rogers. Absolutely. That's good stuff.
I want to tear through these quarterback rankings, I know, on 247.
Well, you have time to do that now, right? What's the schedule look like for you over the next week? What does the college football wind down schedule look like for you?
So we released our top 25. That actually makes sense. I don't know if you saw Kirk Herbstreit's, I don't want to call it a breakdown, but he got emotional after the game.
I turned it off before it happened. I saw it on Twitter.
Yeah. So my son alerted me because I was sitting here. I didn't see it either. And so I decided to put something out on that because the last time I commented on Kirk Herbstreit, it got like 17,000 views. So why not? But we're going to do what we do during the offseason and immediately after the season, the way too early top 25. I'm going to do the conference rankings. I've gone through every result between all the conferences. And so we're going to rank the conferences. We're going to do the power rankings for each conference. We've released the ACC and the Big 12. We'll do the other two. I'm going to go 1 through 134 and rank all the teams.
Okay.
And then I got to separate the ranking for 2024 with the program ranking. See, to me, that's a different ranking, like how you evaluate these. Yeah. So I got to separate those by a few months so people don't get confused. Coaches rankings, all of it.
Can I let me make one more content suggestion.
Sure.
And this can be done. I think this is probably a pretty easy exercise for you. You can do a segment, basically, you can rename it if you want. Trending up, trending down. So who are the biggest movers from last year to this year going up and going down as a program?
I like that.
Because, I mean, I think of one that I think would probably have been on just off the top of my head, who would have probably taken the biggest nosedive would have probably been Florida State based on the results of this season.
Well, I released a bottom 10 as well that I have fun with. And Florida State was that's unprecedented.
Yeah, it is.
12-0, 2-10. That
12-0, 2-10, and also it's not like they were projected to be a top 15, top 25, whatever it was, top 20 team. So for
Speaking
them,
of content ideas, when you brought up somebody, I think Michigan State coming to Kinnick, have you ever done, because of course Kinnick is legendary for being a difficult place to play, but if you actually looked at the results of Iowa football home and away to justify that?
No.
You should do that.
That'd be good, at least under Kirk, or at least, this century. Sure.
And also you need to do profiles
I
on the
know.
player profiles, and
I don't.
rank them.
Do I have enough days to do
Like
that?
the top 20, or you could do the whole, whatever you want to
Whole
do, but the whole
roster?
roster.
Whole roster.
Yeah.
Spend a whole day on Kyson Van Voot. I think he transferred. Did he transfer? I can't.
Why
All
would you
these guys, man,
spend
they
the
got
whole
lost a lot
day
of
on
players.
him?
Yeah. Yeah, we could do Kyson Van Voot Day.
I think people would love it. But as it stands right now, what are they going to get next live?
Men's basketball post game late tonight, 8 p.m. Central Time tip. Means post game a little after 10 Central Time. And then women's basketball tomorrow. The women have lost 5 in a row. They are sliding fast, and they're sliding so fast they may slide their way right out of the tournament conversation before we hit February if they don't get it back on track. They play at Washington tomorrow, must-win game, and things could turn around as quickly as they fell away because all these games have been close. But man, they're playing their way out of things right now, and they're losing in different ways. I mean, they're losing leads and they're turning the ball over. It's been rough for the fan base, but boy, fans are still locked in. We had AJ Guyton, you may know that name, played for Bobby Knight.
I
Back
do.
in the day, was All-American. Had him and Kashin with us
Nice.
after the last game against Oregon, so fans enjoyed that. And we'll get Gary Close back here soon as well for men's post game. But yeah, we'll continue to. I've still got some recruiting videos, some portal videos I haven't manufactured, so those will continue to pop out here periodically. And people can. We're over 10,000 subs here, so if you're not subscribed, you're missing out.
Corey's got it rolling there from the Hawkeye of the Storm.
Yep.
Absolutely.
That's the one.
All right, Corey. We appreciate it. We'll see you back here next week.
Thanks, Mark.